4.
So, Rabbi, Shmuel knows my wife's family from LA. It's you remember Milton Castle? He's from Burbank.
No.
My wife's aunt. Her name is Naomi Leah Bat Reb Choil.
Yeah. Nalia.
Amen. She supported dozens of families in Eretz Yisrael. Dozens of families. She was a single mom of 2 kids, and she put herself through law school, and Rebbe Kessel. She was daughter of Rebbe Kessel. She was married twice. She had 2 kids. She became a paralegal. It's a very interesting story. When she was a paralegal, there was a very, 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 today he's on the Forbes 500. His name is Ron Tudor. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Ron Tudor, he's an Armenian guy. He lives now in Florida. He's from LA. And he's in the construction business. Very, very, very rich guy.
It's a big construction company.
Yeah. Very, very big construction company. So she was a young mother, and she was a paralegal. And he was having like a discussion with some of the lawyers about a case. And he saw the lawyers didn't know anything. And that the lawyers were asking her questions. And she was a paralegal. So he told her, he says, I'm putting you through law school. You're going to be finished. You're going to be my personal attorney. And she went through college, went to university, and this and that. She became a huge lawyer. She had an office in Century City. It was called Castle and Lax. And Baruch Hashem, I mean, she did very, very well. And she died very, very suddenly. Like, it wasn't that she wasn't sick. She was young. She was 70. She was 70, and she did a lot of chesed. I can't tell you the amount of chesed that she did.
And again, how is she related to your wife?
She's my wife's father's sister. Her aunt.
It was also yeah.
Shlomo Kalbach wanted to marry her.
Oh, okay.
He was after her. And she said, I can't deal with it.
She was smarter than that. Okay, Chaim and Aliyah. So we're about to begin. Bashgacha Protis, yesterday I was thinking about the Maamar. That this Maamar is this week, Shabbat, it's Pashas Titzave. What Ashgacha Protis? When Shmuel and Yodi they want to learn Rebbe's Maamar. So they suggested this Maamar. Didn't put the two together, but it's this week's Parsha. But let me tell you a little more about the history. This Maamar was said in Tovshin and Mem Aleph in 1981. And I recall, I was in LA then as an older bacher with the Shluchim. That's when Shmuel and I met those years. And the Rebbe said the Maamar, and on he said it on Shabbos. And on Sunday, we already had a printout of the Maamar, because the bacherim would hear the Chazara of Rabbi Yoel Khan Motzei Shabbos. Then they would stay up writing it up and typing it up and then sending it out all over the world. And I remember it was one page of 2 sides, Aleph and Beis. Now, if you look at this Maamar, I don't know what text you have. By the way, Shmuel, the link didn't come through, but I have the copy of the Maamar anyway. This Maamar, the way we have it today, has 12 paragraphs. We're not going to be learning all of them, I'm telling you now. But we will get to the bulk of it with Hashem's help. So what happened is, this Maamar was based on the previous Rebbe's Maamar of 1927. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the clips that I put up on YouTube and on Chabad sites. One of the things that I did in Russia when I was there about a month and a half ago was I tried to track down the location in which the previous Rebbe said his famous Maamar in Moscow, 1927. And this was the height of the KGB pursuit and closing all yeshivas and chadara and mikvahs. And the Rebbe, previous Rebbe, was in the Chor Shul. And I was in the Chor Shul. And I had a Lubavitcher who knows about that shul, and he took me around from backwards to forwards and outside and inside and underground to locate as much as we can the actual place where the Rebbe said this Maamar. And why is that important? Because the previous Rebbe records in his diary that during the time when he said the Maamar, there were KGB agents stationed in the hall listening to his Maamar. What?
He was warned beforehand. He went anyway. He was warned beforehand of the agents.
Yes, right, correct. He was warned before and he went anyway. And by the way, there's a little more history, Shmuel, that there was at that time in Moscow an organization called Tiferes Bachurim, the beauty of students. And Tiferes Bachurim was an organization for the youth. You see, what his plan was, he says, the older people, you guys can learn. He had no, if it was just teaching older people Gemara and Chumash and Chasidus, he wouldn't lock anyone up. What he didn't want is the continuation of the children and the youth. That's what he was against. And that's why he left 4 shuls in Moscow. There were 18 originally. He left 4, and he said, you old people, you have one in this section of Moscow, you have in this section, you know. So this is part of the Russian mentality till today. They show face. They're into that, they have to show face. So he showed face. He left over 4 shuls. One of them is this shul in which the Maamar Kibla Yehudim was said, which I was in. It's a magnificent, beautiful shul. The architecture, and it's magnificent. And there's a lot of history. It was built by a Jew named Reb Yaakov Polakov. He was a very wealthy Jew, and he gave the money for it. And originally it was built with a large dome. The beauty added, with the large dome. And then shortly after that, the Tsar at the time got upset and had them remove the dome to take away its beauty. And only years later, 50, 60 years later, I think they put the dome back. So there's a lot of history to this shul. And the Rebbe came to the Tiferes Bachurim, and he spoke to the college students and to those that were, learning clandestinely and giving them courage. He spoke to them. It said he spoke to them for a few hours. It seems like after that, he said this Maamar where other people came as well. So, and what was the content of that Maamar? That Mordechai, Yehudi, he gathered the Yiddish kinder, the Jewish children, and in face of Haman and Harasha, and he taught Torah, right? So the message of the Rebbe was that we need to continue teaching Jewish children Torah in face of the enemy. That was the message, loud and clear. Now you imagine that was the worst crime possible. And of course, shortly thereafter, I believe in May or June of 1927, the Rebbe was arrested on Tesvav Sivan, the 15th of Sivan, and he ultimately got a death sentence, and that became a labor sentence, an exile sentence, and then it was abolished completely. So this Maamar that the Rebbe said in 1981 is based on that Maamar of his father-in-law from 1927. And one more point of history, that is that the last Maamar that the Rebbe distributed to people, he gave a copy of the Maamar, was this Maamar Sunday morning, I think Sunday morning or during the week, I forget now, before he had his stroke. Because if you notice the date on the Maamar, if we're looking at the same copy, is Shabbos Parshat Titzave, Yud Adar Rishon, right? Yud Adar Rishon. So this Maamar was then written up, and in 1992, right? In 1992, it was given out by the Rebbe on Sunday. I think on Sunday, and Monday is when he went to the Ohel. And when he had a stroke and he fell down, and that's when his illness started, and ultimately passed on Gimel Tammuz. So this Maamar has special significance to Lubavitcher Hasidim, who see this as a kind of a last will and testament, just like we learned the Basi Ligani of the previous Rebbe, because that was the last Maamar that he had instructed to be distributed, and then he passed away. It became paramount. So this Maamar, V'ata Titzave, today is always learned around Gimel Tammuz time, before Gimel Tammuz. So that's the history to this Maamar. Any questions on the history? So before we go into the Maamar, or is it clear? Yes.
Rabbi, question. The seventh Rebbe, this Rebbe that we're learning now, does he also have a sefer Maamarim like the Frierdiker Rebbe? The same kind of.
Yeah, I mean, here the one I have in front of me that I'm using, it says Sefer Maamarim Melukat. Melukat means a collection. Vov. This is the 6th volume. So there are 6 volumes of these, which are considered today his Maamarim because they were edited. Oh, I forgot to say. So this Maamar in 1981, Shmuel, it was said and printed as an unedited Maamar. But in the 1992, it was given into the Rebbe, and Rabbi Yoel Khan, who prepared the Maamar, prepared it in a way that it's like 4 times the size of the original, with footnotes and elaboration. And the Rebbe then worked on it, took out things, put in things, whatever, and it became an edited Maamar. So when you asked me about Sefer Maamarim of the Rebbe, there are Sefer Maamarim that are Melukat, which are edited Maamarim, and then there are 42 years, of which these are also included, of unedited Maamarim. In other words, every year, the Rebbe said, I would say 30 to 50 Maamarim, from 1951 on. Every year. In other words, many times Shabbos, Yud Shvat, Yud Tes Kislev, Yud Beis Tammuz, right? Yud Aleph Nisan. So he would say Maamarim. But most of those Maamarim were not edited. So we learn them, but they don't have kind of the validity, the scholarship, and that the Rebbe rechecked it and gave it out as a full, complete Maamar, where you could rely on that it's his. To say it's his means you need to edit it and check it and work it out. Yes.
That is Likutei Sichos, or
no?
What is it?
No.
That's not.
Likutei Sichos are, as you say, a collection of talks. Sichas is the plural of Sicha, which is the talks that the Rebbe gave on Shabbos and Yom Tov and during the week. Then they took those talks, and another group of people, of which I know, they prepared those talks, sent them to the Rebbe for his editions. He sent them out, and then they were distributed all over. And then they were put into a book form called Likutei Sichos, of which there are 39 volumes today. But that's not Maamarim. Maamarim is Chasidus. It's as we've been learning all the different Maamarim. It's a whole different style. A Sicha means, as a Rashi, you have a question on Rashi. You bring an answer from the Ramban, and you ask why isn't the Ramban's answer not good enough for Rashi? And then after the Rebbe will explain the halachic and Talmudic and Chumash explanation. He'll also usually bring a hayra, a bottom line behavior and activity of that he derives from what he spoke about. But that's a sicha, that's a talk form, not a Maamar. We believe in Chabad that when a Lubavitcher Rebbe said a Maamar, Hashem's Shechina was going through the mouth of the Rebbe as he was saying the Maamar, and that's why sometimes there were questions later asked, and the Rabbeim from the 7 Rebbes, from the Alter Rebbe through the Rebbe, they said that was said during a Maamar, and it's a whole different experience. So as much as you try to understand it with Seichel, there's a divinity there that's very prominent in the Maamar. Let's learn a little bit. The Ato Titzave B'nei Yisrael, and you, Moshe Rabbeinu, shall command the Jewish people, Jewish children, V'yichu eilecho shemen zayis zoch, take to yourself refined oil, olive oil, Kosis lamoir, it should be ground up well, lamoir, to give off good light. And with this light, lahalas neir tamid, you'll ignite a constant light in the Beis Hamikdash, you'll have in the Mishkan, etc. Beis Hamikdash, you'll have a constant light. It's called a Ner Tamid, which today we have in shuls, right? It's known the questions that the previous Lubavitchers, the 6 Lubavitcher Rebbes, ask on this verse. Regarding all other mitzvahs in the Torah, it says, you shall instruct the children of Israel. And over here it says, so the language is very different. Va'ata Titzave means you shall. Who is giving the command, Ruvain? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God. So the normal language in the Torah is Tzavas B'nei Yisrael. It doesn't say V'ata because it doesn't want to take away from the command coming from God. But nevertheless, in this verse, it does say V'ata. So the first question is why the change and what's the significance of saying V'ata Titzave? So this question is brought in the previous Maamar of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. Here the Rebbe adds his own insight, to add that diuk mashakos va'ata Titzave hulei rak haloshen elagam ba'toichen. He says the question that my ancestors ask isn't just a question of language; it's a question of content as well. And he explains. The Loshen V'yata Titzave mashma, the language V'yata Titzave implies Shemesha hu ha-mitzave, that Moshe is the commander. V'tzarech lahavin, we must understand, Hare Moshe hu hashliach limsa l'Yisrael tatziv HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe is only a messenger to deliver God's command. V'lo menem V'yata Titzave. Why does it say V'yata Titzave? That's why the Rebbe is saying, Moshe, that it's not just a question of the difference in language. The content of Tzavas B'nei Yisrael in comparison to V'ata Titzave seems to be contradictory. Because Tzavas B'nei Yisrael implies what? It implies that Moshe is that Moshe is only a shliach. And over here it says just the opposite. And over here the implication is that Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that's giving the instruction. Boaz, who's giving the instruction? Hashem is giving the instruction. Moshe is only an shliach. But the language and the implication, the tochen of the language implies otherwise. That's the first question. Number 2. We also must understand the wording and take to yourselves. Sheyaviu Hashem what?
They shall bring to you.
V'yichu elecha. Yeah, okay. They shall bring to you. I was just going to say it. Sheyaviu Hashem el Moshe. That they should bring the oil to Moshe. Elecha. That's what it says in the pasuk. The lechoira seemingly kivin shehalos adneides hoysal yidei Aaron. Who was the one that ignited the menorah? Aaron. Lama hutzich lahavis Hashem el Moshe. Yoni, if you're lighting the menorah, I bring to you the oil. I don't give it to Shmuel. I give it to you. You're doing the job. So who lit the menorah? Aaron, the Kohen Gadol. The Torah says, "V'yikhu eilecha," bring to you, to Moshe, the oil. That's the second question. What? Why? Why bring Moshe the oil if Aaron's the one lighting the menorah? That's question number 2. Now, question number 3. Gam tzorach lahavim mashakos shemen. It should be olive oil. Kosis lamor, grounded well. The olives should be grounded well. Lamor, so they give off good light. The lechoira have loy lemeimar. That's the Rosh Tevis says have loy lemeimar. The verse should have said shemen lahoyir. What is? Make sure the oil is ground. The olives are ground well. It should be good, refined. Lahoyir, to light, to burn. Yeah. Yes.
The Maamar is the source of the light, the one giving off the light.
Right.
So it should have said that give light, but it says to the source of the light.
Right. I was going to say, Lahoyer means to light, and Mar is the source of light. So what do you mean, make the oil very good to impact the source of light? What do I care about the source of light? I just care about it lighting well. Lahoyer. Question number 4. In the verse that follows, Nemar, it says, Me'erev ad boiker. You should light, the menorah should be lit from the evening till the morning. Yes? Shalom. It's supposed to be on from the night till the morning. What does it say in this verse? V'kam Nemar, but over here it says, Lahalish ner tomit. It has to be lit and on, not just 20 always, constantly, ner tomit. Like you have in the shul, a ner tomit. Is a real ner tomit? If the administration is cheap and they cut it off at night, it's not right. It's supposed to be on the entire time. Ner tomit. And the person who donates the ner tomit, he expects that light to be on 24/7, 365 days a year, the entire time. That's what his donation is if he's buying the honor of ner tomit. Here it doesn't say.
It wasn't 24/7. No, in the base of Mikdash, it was only a few hours.
No, it's fine.
That what?
Only
Shmuel?
during the...
What'd you say, Shmuel?
Yeah, the Maamar will talk about it.
Right.
During this morning.
Right.
Only at night.
Right. Okay, but
When it's in the morning, it was a short day.
what? What did Reuven say? What?
I said they went into the morning when it was short days.
What does that have to do with short and long days? It says it should be on their tummy constantly.
Short night.
Okay.
That today.
Let's go. Okay, those are the questions. We finished with the questions. They weren't used to budget cuts, synagogue budget cuts. The Beis HaMikdash didn't have these budget cuts. They said, it's coming time, you got to give your shekels. Everyone donate, and don't give me your bubble mices. Go out and find the money, loan the money, it's up to you. We're providing a service. We're the Beis HaMikdash. You're being inspired because of us, because of this holy temple, so you're telling me you don't have money for funds, there should be a Ner Tamid. Anyway, those are the end of the questions. Now we go Beis, chapter 2. We start now the bulk of the Maamar. So my saintly father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak explains, Ben Maimori HaYedua, in his very famous Maamar that I told you about earlier, Divrei HaMaschil, which begins with the words, V'kibel HaYehudim, from the Megillah, and the Jews accepted upon themselves, etc., to do Torah mitzvahs. Shenema bePurim Kotten, that Maamar of my father-in-law was said, not on Purim, but 1 month before that, Purim Kotten, Tafresh Pei Zayin, 1927. And he explains that the Titzave, the word Titzave, command, Hutzavse v'chibur. It's associated with the Aramaic word Tzavta, not Tzeves. Tzeves is a Hebrew word, and Tzeves is spelled, by the way, with a base. Is that correct? The Tzevet, right? The staff. A staff of a company is called a Tzevet. But that's with a base. What? Are you sure? Are you sure? Okay, I thought it's a base. I'll check. I'll check later, but okay. Anyway, but this is not Hebrew. This is Aramaic. Tzavta v'chibur. Chibur is Hebrew, which means that you shall command means you shall connect. You shall be mechaber. It is Moshe who connects and binds and connects the Jewish people with the infinite God, with the infinite light of God. And by Moshe impacting the Jews. How is he impacting them? By binding them to the infinite light of Hashem. Guess what? Moshe receives an advantage. And he says in the brackets, why is that? The Moshe of Yisrael, because Moshe and the Jews, hem dugmas reish v'regel, are compared to the head and the foot. Kosis, as it says in the Pasuk, Sheish Meyas Elef Raglei Oham, 600,000 foot walkers, Asher Anochi Bekir Boy, Moshe says, which I stand amongst you. The B'chol Yisrael, He Maraglayim de Moshe. We learn from this Pasuk that all the Jews are like called and considered the feet of Moshe. And Moshe, who are Rosh Lehem. And Moshe is their head. And just like in a person, a human being, the feet lead a person to a place in which the head would not on his own able to get there. You need the feet to walk there. As bright and as sharp your head is. If you want to get somewhere, you need your feet to take you there, because you can think and understand as much as you want, but if you can't walk there, you don't get there. So too with Moshe and the Yidden. Through the Jews, which only are called the feet of Moshe. Mitosef, there's an advantage of Eloi, a tremendous advantage in Moshe that Moshe himself didn't have, even though he was Moshe the head. He's Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a great leader, but guess what? He needs the feet, he needs us. This is the meaning of the verse. Here there are 600,000 foot goers, and Moshe says, I stand amongst you. Shall yedei raglayom, through the feet of the nation. What happens is the revelation of Anochi, I am God, your God, is drawn inside Moshe. In other words, this is a play on words. This is not the literal meaning of the verse. The literal meaning, pay attention. You got to use your head. The literal meaning of the verse is, I, Moshe Rabbeinu, am standing among 600,000 foot soldiers, right? Foot goers. Fine. Here the Rebbe says, the meaning is that through you guys, through you, the foot goers, the Raglayim, the Anochi, Asher Anochi, literally it refers to who? To Moshe. The Hasidic interpretation in the Maamar, Asher Anochi, refers to God. That the Anochi of God, the oneness of God, is drawn, it says, Bikir boy, into Moshe. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was lacking or didn't have yet this experience of godliness. The Anochi experience. When does Moshe Rabbeinu attain the Anochi experience? Only because he's among 600,000 goers, footwalkers. In other words, we Eden, we're called the Raglayim. We add something to Moshe that Moshe didn't have before. And what is that? That now he has the Anochi within him, which is a fantastic insight. How Moshe needs the Jews. Any leader that's a real leader needs Yidden, needs Chasidim, needs Talmidim. If you discount them and you just, you just need them because you want your numbers to have high popularity. How many people came to the Tish? How many people came to the Shir? But really I'm not interested in the people. I'm not interested in the, it's all about me. You're not getting Anochi Bekir Boy. The Anochi Bekir Boy is because Moshe realizes without the footwalkers, the Raglayim, he is no Moshe Rabbeinu. Because what's a real Moshe? A real Moshe is an intermediary who communicates divinity to Bnei Yisrael. You hear what a Moshe Rabbeinu is? Not just a good rabbi. Reuven, this is why we need a Rebbe. Why do we need a Rebbe? Because a Rebbe is a Moshe Rabbeinu, not just a great scholar. There are many great scholars, and they're very important. Teachers, codifiers, halachic experts. Absolutely. But a Moshe Rabbeinu, like I told you in the last year, is the one who brings the infinite God, the godly, holy, divine experience into our lives. But what we're learning now is, how does he have that ability, Shmuel? It's because we give him the ability. Asher Anochi Bekir Boy. The Anochi goes into Moshe because of us, because he's standing amongst us. Fantastic thing to think about. Let's continue. And he says, you, I command you to bring, that they bring to you the oil. Since Moshe connects and binds the Jews with the infinite light of God, that's why they need to bring Moshe the oil, even though who's lighting the menorah? Aaron. But nonetheless, Aaron's job is not to draw God into their lives. V'yikhu elecha, bring to him. Sheyosifu toisus b'Moshe. What does that mean? Hold on. It means that in order for Moshe to help us, we need to help him. So if we brought the oil, Yoni, to Aaron, yes, technically Aaron would now be able to take your good oil and light the menorah. The problem is that experience would not have the divine in it. It would be a human experience. Who is the one that's been charged from on high to bring the divine experience into the world? Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, we have to bring the oil to him. What does the implication mean? We have to make him the Moshe Rabbeinu. Fantastic, fantastic insight. Well, the next paragraph, to understand this, he prefaces in the Maamar that Moshe Rabbeinu is called the faithful shepherd. Now he says there's two meanings, and this comes in continuation of the previous Maamar that we learned last week. Moshe Rabbeinu was a faithful shepherd of the Jews. And that he what? Number one is that he's a faithful shepherd. Number two, that he actually sustains. He sustains emunah in us. So one thing is that Moshe Rabbeinu himself is a faithful shepherd. And number two is that this faithful shepherd, because he's a faithful shepherd, he's able and willing and accomplishes that he instills in us the emunah. He feeds the faith in us. The emunah sheyesh lebi Yisrael mitzad atzmam. But wait a minute, we have our own emunah. We are called believers, the children of believers. You're right. But guess what? It can be makif. It can be superficial. Right? I believe in Hashem, and yet I do whatever I do that's not appropriate. But you have faith. My faith is superficial. It doesn't touch my inner core. That's why we need a Moshe Rabbeinu who feeds every yid with the idea of munah, who she'emunah tiyeh b'pnimius. Here it is. What does Moshe do? He accomplishes, he works towards instilling in us the faith that it shouldn't just be superficial. It should be, like I said last week, in our kishkis. Bottom line, you live with faith. And it's not just words or fantasy, but it's reality. It says in Zoyer, this supernal faith, Yitzin v'yispanis midei al yodcha, will be fed, and parnasa will, through you, the Jews will have that al yidei Moshe. That's what it says in the Zohar. The fact that Moshe sustains the emunah in a Jew, it becomes like food. It's digested. It becomes your flesh and blood. Right? Food is digested. Everyone knows that. Depending on what we eat and how we eat, it becomes part of us. Moshe Rabbeinu makes emunah part of us. Now our Rebbe says, my father-in-law, in his discourse of 1927, continues explaining over there and speaking about The fact that Moshe is a faithful shepherd, that this applies not only to Moshe Rabbeinu who gave us the Torah, but to every Moshe in every generation. And he says, the Roshei Alpha Yisrael, the leaders of the Jewish people, in every generation, they support the emunah of the Jews in their generation. That their faith should be pnimius, should be what? Inner, deep. Now you understand the previous Rebbe was saying it in 27. He was talking, guys, don't give up your faith. Stalin wants to kill you. He's shutting down everything. We have to continue the Jewish tradition of teaching children, and your emunah should be lived. And the Rebbe says, he's quoting his father-in-law, who says in this Maamar, for example, Mordechai HaTzadik of the Megillah, who was an extension of Moshe, of his generation. Maamar Hazal, and it's a Chazal. The Chazal say, the sages say, Mordechai bedoro, Moshe bedoirei. Mordechai during his generation was like Moshe during his generation. Even during the time of the decree of Haman, to study Torah and do mitzvahs was related. You have to have self-sacrifice. Hikil kehilos. Like I told you earlier, what did Mordechai do? He gathered groups, berabim, in public squares, and he taught them Torah. He strengthened their faith in God. Bahashem, Velamid Chazak, and he said to them, stay and strong. Believe in the Torah v'kiyam mitzvahs, to do Torah, learn Torah, to do mitzvahs. And after my father-in-law explains at great length that Moshe and an extension of Moshe within each generation are those leaders who strengthen the faith in God in every generation. He explains the language that we asked about before. Why does it say that bring the olive oil for the source of the light, called the mar, lamar v'loy lahoyer? It doesn't say bring the oil to light. It says bring the oil to impact the source of light. Why? During the time of Golus, every single Jew during that time is shattered and crushed, just like Kosis, right? Kosis, it should be grounded well, crushed. So in the time of Golus, we're spiritually crushed because we don't see the Shekhinah and feel the Shekhinah. Oh, wow. Somehow, the feeling of being crushed and oppressed brings us to the greatest type of feeling, which is called the source of light. Not only the light, but the source of light. You want to touch the source? It comes at that time it came through which way? It came through Kosis. Kosis did not lead a person to despair. Listen to this, Hillel. Very, very important point. Normally when you say Kosis, right? You have an olive. You crush it, you crumble it, you smush it, you smash it. It's no longer an olive. Think of the olive now, from the perspective of the olive. Is the olive happy? No.
Yeah.
Says the Rebbe, the olive is very happy. Because the olive knows that its purpose is to give oil. And the only way to give oil is through Kosis. When Hashem, for his infinite wisdom and reasoning, for whatever Hashem decides that we have to be in Golus, we need to know that the Golus itself is the springboard for Geula. Or better said, that Golus itself touches the Ma'or, the illuminary, and not just Lahoyer, the illumination. In other words, you don't need Kosis Shmuel to accomplish illumination. You could be in a period of freedom and goodness and happiness and illuminate. But when does the deepest and best part of the Jew come to be? When he's put against the wall. Golus. Kosis, smashed. You're going to try smashing me? I'm going to take out my reserves that I've never taken out before, and I'm going to show you what I'm made of. That's Kosis. And that's why it says, Limor. Let's continue, we'll conclude. So, B'tzorech Lohavim, Hashayches B'hapirush, B'Kosis Limor, Lamavur B'maimel of Nezer, Shemoshe, V'Sbushus Lei B'Chol Dora, Zono Farasamunish Diber Pnimius. So the Rebbe, I just told you the answer, but the Rebbe is asking, and we'll see what he says tomorrow as we continue. He's asking, what's the connection between what my father-in-law says, that in every generation there is a Moshe Rabbeinu? Why? This is the question. This is the question we're going to be left with today. Why is it that in order to accomplish this sensation, that the negative experience is really the ultimate of the highest and best and greatest experience, why does that require a Moshe Rabbeinu? Why can't I do it at all? In other words, the pasuk says, bring the olive oil to Moshe, not to Aaron. Right? And the previous Rebbe says, the idea is, because Moshe, we cause that Moshe has this infinite power from Hashem, and then he puts it back into us, our emunas pnimius. So he says, okay, but why must? But what's the connection between the crushing part? If I didn't have a Moshe Rabbeinu and I myself felt crushed, and I want to do something about that feeling, seemingly I can do it as well. In other words, the crushing feeling seems to be independent of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's his question. But in the Maamar, he says, of my father-in-law, the juxtaposition of the Maamar is that he brings both clauses together. So the Rebbe comments and says, because he brings both ideas together, it shows there's an association and a relationship, and he wants to understand what that is, and we'll learn that tomorrow. Have a good day, Zagizant. Yes.
Rabbi Dalfin,
yes.
When we say both concepts again, both concepts means
both
concepts together. What
the concept of Kosis, of being crushed, Kosis Lamor, that there's something significant, Moshe. There's something significant in the fact that Hashem says the oil should be Kosis. And the Rebbe said briefly in the Maamar that that's the idea, right? And the second concept that it's associated with Moshe in every generation, a leader. Why the two? Why the two? If the Jews themselves would have crushed the oil, and the oil would have been brought to Aaron, why wouldn't that be good enough? You hear me?
So again, the crushing is for the source of the oil.
Right.
To get to the source.
Right.
Yes.
So why does that require Moshe Rabbeinu? It says that you should crush the olive and bring it to Moshe. His question is, why do you have to do? But why are both necessary? You can just do the crushing yourself and accomplish that spiritual experience, and that would be adequate. Moshe, do you have a copy of this Maamar in English at home?
Okay.
Moshe?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I think...
I can sell you one right here.
Where would I find it? Where would I find it? Okay.
Okay, look it up. Guys, have a good day. Hatzlacha. Bye-bye.